All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. It is a Thursday evening. It's the final day of January 2022. These months just drip by like weeks. The weeks are non-existent. They're practically hours at this point. And we're here hanging out. It's a wonderful night. I'm welcoming back to the studio again. Rob, how you feeling?
I'm doing good. How are you, fresh off your appearance on the Ian show?
On the Ian show, it was great.
Yeah.
I had a fun time down there. This is a nice drive. It was a nice on-air experience. It looked like a lot of people enjoyed themselves, and
We did very well, for sure. So.
I appreciate it. I hope I made it palatable for you.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that show before. That's the first time longer than 5 minutes that I've seen the show. I watched the whole thing, so I appreciate that.
Wow.
Yeah, well, I figured it's like when I watch the Yankees or the Rangers, like, all right, they might need me. Even though I'm sitting on my couch,
Exactly.
They might need me. I might have to send some energy, but none required. Within the first 3 minutes, I was like, all right, Frank's on point. Let me just dissect what's going on here instead.
What's the power dynamic in the room like?
Again, to me, it's the Ian show, because, whatever. I just thought that he came across as genuine, as a genuine person, and I like that. Like, and the girl too. Like, I know you said something. It was something fun. I forgot what it was, but you said something funny, and you could hear her laugh, and so those type of things is to me better. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's what I took away from it. Everything else, I mean, when I'm like that, I joke all the Ian show, because I don't think it's right to disrespect people, and it sees like that audience gives that guy some shit.
I noticed some of that.
You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, you might not agree, or you might not think he's up to whatever it is, but that comes from the top, is the way I saw it. You know?
Yeah.
So I didn't like I said, I thought that he seemed to be a genuine person. I think you should have him on this show.
I'm gonna get in touch with him, see if he wants to come on.
Yeah.
Especially if he's ever in the New York area, to have him in here.
That would be cool.
Yeah, I'll tell him to come on a Thursday.
And then everything else as far as what the power dynamic. I mean, I think when you were there, you changed the dynamic tremendously, because you were able to bring a knowledge which personally, again, I've seen the show for a while, for a couple of times, but again, it doesn't resonate with me. No disrespect, it just doesn't. And so your level of knowledge that you brought to the table was a little bit more, but and I don't know how much that was embraced, as opposed to whatever. But the other aspect is just, and this was something I never thought about, but until I started coming on your show, and I think people who are trained in this sort of thing obviously can see, but you understand the technical aspects of putting on a show, like speaking at different, you know what I mean? Like, cause that's tough. Like, like how many different people were there, and they talk over and this and that.
Yeah.
But you understand how to, like, the craft, you know? Like, I didn't see a craft. I saw more, I don't know, sometimes things are too much too soon, but I think you've paid so much dues, and you come from a background of this sort of thing where it's so apparent to me. So, on both levels, like, just straight up, like, what do you know? Well, anybody can know anything. You just got to read about it. I mean, that's not too hard.
Yeah.
Right? But how you could make that fit into a flow of things. I don't know. Certain things boggled my mind.
I'm
To be honest
really
with you.
appreciative when people see stuff like that. It's never really bad, and I don't put together shows so that people will analyze how the show is constructed. It really is just, how do you create a cohesive experience for someone?
Yeah.
But every once in a while, when you or somebody like that will notice there is a certain type of
Yeah, well, I don't know if
chemical.
I don't think I would have noticed that without having been on your show, but like Krista went to school for journalism and production, and she worked on that, so she understands that too, and so she will mention to me like that sort of thing. And but now I have experience in this, and I'm just like, what are you doing, my man? You know what I mean? What are you doing? But I mean, people vote with their wallet, right? So how can you say anything other than that? At the end of the day, you know, good on that. To me, the Ian show is not so bad though. I think that I respect genuineness, right? You know what I mean? So to me, he seemed like like that's somebody who'd be like, oh, you should have him on, because he seemed like, you know, you could like have whatever it is, it doesn't matter, but like, you know, be true to yourself.
You know what it is? He's a very curious guy. I mean, I really enjoyed all the staff, everybody there. They were very accommodating, and they're really nice. And I had a wonderful time talking with them all. But since we were talking about Ian in particular, he's a very curious guy, and I think that his curiosity needs to be.
That's what I mean. Like, there's something
it needs to be stimulated a little bit more.
It shouldn't be used as, I mean, unless that's in the contract. Like, you're the butt. Like, you're the jester. Like, that's how, I don't know, maybe that's what it is. I don't think that's what's happening.
No.
Right? But I think that there's things that are far more interesting. Like I said, anybody can know anything. There's nothing that's that hidden these days, right? You could learn. So whatever. It's more about people. And, you know, I would rather somebody be genuine than a douchebag.
Oh,
call me crazy.
No, I understand you. I understand, and I saw I see some of the ragging that goes on too, and
no, but like I'm saying, that stage is set. You know, I mean, that's gotta be tougher. Like the guys, I mean, look, I'm sure he's doing well, so okay, but like, you go on there and your own audience clowns you like that, like, what? You know, I mean, and look, it's the internet.
It's the nature of the internet.
It's the internet.
It's
fine.
just what it is.
Okay, I get that, but better to be judged by the internet and whatever on your merits than have subtle positioning. You know what I mean? Like, because to me, it was so obvious.
To your point before, maybe that there is a little bit more of that that actually exists for the everyday viewer. You know, if it was just one night that you watched it all the way through, it could just be that.
Yeah, I guess so.
Because I'm sure that he's embraced more than he's clowned on, and even those who clown, sometimes that just becomes part of the show. Oh, this is you can always expect that kind of a take from this guy or that guy, and maybe it just becomes part of the normalcy of the experience. I don't know. The chat
goes so fast that it's impossible to even see anything. But like, I'm looking at the thing, I'm watching the show, I'm looking at the thing, and it's just like it's something like F him, fire him. It's like,
I mean, I know we've had some good nights. We've had some good nights on this show over the years, especially when the internet was a slightly more generous place. But it was something else. So every time you just glance over at the television to see 40,000 people watching, that was I'm like, damn. I keep that as in my imagination every night just to keep the energy.
I think that, and I think it was very good for you to do the show, and I think that if, like I said, you have a technical understanding of how the production should work, let alone with just the stuff that you got going on, the people that you guys got with the making the video, everything.
Yeah.
There's a different level. And
I almost said it's time to go to break. Let's go to break and we'll be right back. Yep.
But that's what I mean. Like, you understand different aspects of it, and instead of just ego tripping. So and look, you got an ego. You sit here and you talk, right? But it's totally different though, bro. Like, you got a much better way about you, and you're able to intermix knowledge and humor and all of these things. And to me, I could put my bias. Of course, I'm sitting here right now. What do I think is better, right?
Yes.
Objectively speaking.
Well, I appreciate it.
Objectively speaking, like, come on, internet. You guys don't. What are you doing?
Well,
why aren't you here?
We'll see.
Why aren't you here? What are you doing?
I guess we're just on two different paths. And I'm also it's. what I do to expand the show is I also have to give a lot of credit to Tim over the years too. He's the one that got out on the road, went to places, brought a camera where there were no cameras.
Yeah, I mean, Murr told me about him back in the Occupy days. Like, he was showing me his stream, right?
Yeah.
So absolutely, absolutely, he went out and made it happen
For sure.
right? But you know,
by and large,
that was a decade ago.
right. But that was the foundation for, you know, how do you cap once you build
That
up
was
that
a foundation
audience.
for a name,
Yeah.
sure. But I'm saying, like, a craft is different. I think you have all the components and the ability to hone the craft. That's what you do. I mean, you were sitting here doing the show. You were doing introductions. You were doing breaks. You were doing all these various things when there was, you know, you had less than 300 subscribers. You had, you know what I mean? Like, and you were doing a show. So I think that work will pay off.
I appreciate
and I think that people will resonate with it. Like I was saying, it's people. Like, I mean, and not for nothing. I mean, like, well, you know, there wasn't any like revelations going on. You know what I mean? It was like, we're talking at what are we talking about?
Yeah, I want.
And he obviously he's got a different audience than you. I think there's probably much more of you know, different thing, because everything's so polarized now. So if you can target the bigger chunk in the middle, maybe. But the problem is there's no separation between you know, your view of everything now. Everything's just like thrown together. Like, it's like there's a very huge.
Well, that's why I thought that the best thing for me to do if I was going to be a guest and bring something to the table is just to stay focused on bigger picture, and just and just add a little bit of that. And, you know, I got a Freemason reference in there.
You got a Freemason reference in there. What else was in there? Oh, like the possible switching out of Ghislaine. From not really existing. Like, well, we've only seen a sketch, right?
Isn't that fun?
Right.
That's a little bit more fun than just.
No, that's not. I don't think that's what's happening. All right, well, you know.
Perhaps it is. First of all, what do you think about the disparity between her 20 years and R. Kelly's 30 years?
Exactly. What do I think?
My gosh.
What do I think?
Like, I mean, he deserves jail time, absolutely.
Yeah.
But we're talking about, you know,
I mean, like was
scale.
brought up on the show. You know what I mean? Guilty of trafficking.
To whom?
To whom? Right. Absolutely, that's true. And
I got to drop Alex Acosta's name.
You did.
Nobody.
Dude, it was like people were like, they're thinking of the guy from the news. You know what I mean? Like,
oh no.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like what was his name? Brian Acosta, right?
Jim.
Jim, whatever. You're gonna
Fat
even know.
Jim.
Yeah, I know.
Not so slim.
See,
Jim.
that was what I mean. Like, it was once I was watching. Once it was like, Frank's got this. Like, he's on point tonight. Like, okay. Then the thing became, all right, let me just see how this, like, you know, like, it's almost like, for me, when I was in school, if I liked the subject, I did well. If I was like, nah, forget it. It was like I was gonna like figure something else to do to like entertain myself. So I was much more involved with, okay, what is this dynamic here, and why, like, this is a big show, and it was good for you to be on there, and it was gracious to even invite you on the show.
I was there,
sure. So I'm
yeah.
not trying to try anything. Like, it really was like, that's something. But yeah, looking around, people are just like in that moment, like, what is this guy? Like
Ian?
Like everybody, like, it was almost like they were almost like, oh, you're gonna screw yourself up. Like, you don't even know what you're like, because you were talking about things that just didn't even know. You know what I mean? It's with the Acosta thing.
Oh yeah.
You know,
yeah.
that wasn't even like a real thing.
I mean, but that's what I'm talking about. It's huge. I mean, we can talk about whatever the hell you want, but the bigger stories are the ones that were not. These were little things that happened in press conferences,
right?
Obscure press conferences that nobody even remembers,
right?
And, about how higher intelligence entities stopped him in his previous job that had to do with the Operation Leap Year, which is
right.
the most encompassing Jeffrey Epstein investigation there was. I mean, it's everything you need to know to even infer what this was really about.
One thing is, I know you were saying how you think Ghislaine was his handler, and we've talked about that. I don't know what the deal was. I think that, did you see that there's like a Ghislaine miniseries going on right now? And I caught like one little part of it, right? And of course, you know, it's produced by, I don't even know what channel it was on. It's like Stars or something like that. So, you know, this is mass media shaping of who this person is, right? But it does go into and we know who the father is, right? I mean, this guy, I mean, they even said, and they show like at the end, you know what I mean, his casket being put in the thing, the guys with the curly cues, and they're like, you know, and they said that like this is one of the biggest assets to Mossad, and like, so, okay, what was her role? What was her thing? Like, who was she? She was groomed, I think, to be that socialite, because they have, again, I only seen one episode. I don't know how many it's gonna be. But they have it where it's like they're going to Oxford, right? Like, so like her early 80s and who she was as a person. And they're asking people. And she's definitely mover and shaker. She's definitely somebody that's bringing people in and moving them around and introducing. And you know, they're all getting wasted.
She's the arm candy.
Yeah. She was like I mean, I can't say that about her, just knowing the diabolical nature, but yes, like,
well, it's not, that doesn't take away from what she actually was doing, but of course the disparity, the contrast between her socialite, very attractive, voluptuous form to what she was doing, and then of course I think the most ridiculous thing about the whole mainstream narrative is that she was the sole provider and supplier of Jeffrey's urges. Like, she existed just to provide him with girls. It's so ridiculous.
I mean, she existed to continue what it seems like that was a generational thing that was going on.
Yeah.
And if you don't think that this is a blackmail operation, I mean, and I think that, you know, the father certainly was, it seems like the father, because she was, I mean, that yacht was named after her, that he fell off the yacht. He fell off the yacht and died, right? That's what happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Right?
It was some kind of a drowning.
Yeah. In the Canary Islands.
Well, it's...
I think the layers of who's handling who, well, we don't even know. These are whatever. But they were a part of the web for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
And just to plug that into what I said before about the whole Alex Acosta situation, when you have a higher up entity coming down to tell you nix it, I'm not saying that that's the highest entity,
right?
You know, the intelligence communities are that's just another layer in the shielding. So who the fuck knows? It could have been the King Lizard himself.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. Ghislaine seemed to be more like a like, remember, like if you would like go out in the city and like, you know, someone comes up and hands you the stuff, you know, the promoters, take my card, and like, it's like, all right. She was kind of like that for the elite, and to set up certain scenarios.
Well, hey,
I don't know.
Before we go into our opening, I wanted to say two quicks.
We haven't started yet?
No, yeah, I know. Well, because I want to do something in particular for our guest tonight, Dr. Sean Morton. David Morton. Sean David Morton. He's joining us. He's got a long history in the public eye for decades now when it comes to paranormal, time travel, remote viewing, UFOs. He was a frequent guest on Art Bell's Dreamland and all iterations of his time with Coast to Coast and all that. So it's going to be an interesting night indeed. But real quick, you heard that the last World War II Medal of Honor recipient died?
Yes. 98
years old. Just want to put his name out. Herschel Woody Williams died at 98 years old. They're all gone. And then another one, Dr. Zelenko, died.
That I saw today.
This man saved thousands of lives.
Yeah,
he needs to be properly remembered. I think he was most effective in his humble approach to everything. And as I said before, it was not only just that he came in as a local doctor from Monroe,
Right.
you know, to talk about this, and actually got through to a president of the United States, and then started trickling out to the public about what they can do for a completely treatable bug that was blown up to destroy the world.
Yeah.
But it was more so he became even more valuable in the last couple of years, where he was a very concise speaker on the greater nature of the metaphysical battle that we're in.
Absolutely. You and Tracy had him on, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, obviously I'd seen a lot of things that he did, and he absolutely put it out there. And, you know, it's a shame. And I believe, did it say he was only 48 years
49.
old? 49.
49 years old. I thought he was in his 50s at least.
Well, I mean, that's like 4 months difference, Frank.
I mean, you know, like I'm talking about like 56, 7 around there.
Yeah. He should have. I don't know. I mean, yeah, whatever. It's he did a great thing, and should be remembered for at least having the courage to stand up in this insanity that we are dealing with.
New media will not forget him, and we will be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go anywhere. It's going to be a great night. It already is.
Right after the break, we're going to interview Eric Weihenmayer, who climbed the highest mountain in the world, Mount Everest. But he's gay. He's blind. So we'll hear about that coming up.
Okay, as we head to the break, a look at the 6 o'clock.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back.
Does anybody else want to stay?
Let's ride!
Yes, we are here. We are here, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to, quite frankly, the official opening. Not the pre-show. Now it's the official. Remember, share the show live or on demand with everybody you know. If you're watching live, please get it out. Get it out there. That is the best way to help grow the audience and to maintain the audience so nobody forgets. They're very easy to forget. The internet is a hypnotizing, confusing place. But I also want to remind you that you can contribute to tonight's broadcast through your words and through your contribution, your monetary contribution, to, quite frankly, superchat.com. That's how we do it, because we don't have super chats on YouTube.
You're not rolling those 10 G's a night, huh?
Not rolling those. That was just like mind-numbing, but that's what we got. It's so good to end here. But before we go any further, I want to jump in on what we have coming up tonight, and that is our guest. But before we do that, something that will set the table for it. Here are two very notable news stories, because we're going to be talking about prophecy. And as you know, on this show we have done prophecy in the last I think it was in the spring, when me and Rob on a Thursday night specifically focused on Russia related prophecy.
Russia.
Yes. Well, a couple things happened in the last 24 hours I should add to the momentum that we were hinting at. Number one from Yahoo: expanding NATO squares up to Russia as Putin slams imperial alliance.
This is in reference to Finland and Sweden as well.
And Sweden, that's right. United States vowed Wednesday to reinforce Europe's defenses in wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It's actually a counterstrike, if you want to be honest. It was initially NATO's invasion. Declared Moscow's the West's greatest, and Moscow declared the West's greatest threat, prompting Vladimir Putin to lash out at alliances of imperial ambitions. Very nice. Meeting in Madrid, NATO leaders said Russia is the most significant direct threat to allies' security and peace and stability in the Euro-Atlantic area. This came as NATO welcomed Sweden and Finland as invitees to join the alliance, and U.S. President Joe Biden announced new deployment of U.S. troops, ships, and planes. Here's the other thing I want to bring up. This is from Zero Hedge. Biden announces permanent U.S. base in Poland, America's first on NATO's eastern flank, which we had once promised under 1997 NATO-Russia Founding Act. NATO agreed not to establish a permanent military presence east of Germany. I would like to remind you all that when me and Rob were going through Edgar Casey and Baba Vanga and Fatima and all that stuff, just remember that Baba Vanga predicted that everything, Poland, Romania, up to Germany, would be just torched, incinerated.
Well, we don't want that.
No, we don't. But you can see the further poking and prodding, and of course the almost infinite patience from the other side.
What does Switzerland feel about this? That's what I want to know.
They're hosting all of the greatest summits and
Dark Empire.
Yeah.
I'm familiar.
Yeah, the Dark Empire.
Who else is over there in Switzerland?
The Dark Empire loves to go to the neutral nation to talk about how they're going to take over the rest of the world.
God. Your show could be ruined in about 11 seconds if I wanted to.
Shut it down.
Oh yeah.
I should have tried. My God, let's just all shut it down.
Yeah, it's okay.
But so this is a little bit of what I want to talk about tonight with our guest, Dr. Sean David Morton. And now, here's a little bit on him. Stunning predictions of future events in his books, and his lectures, and his monthly Delphi Associates newsletter. They have brought him recognition as one of America's premier futurists and researchers. He was also a mainstay and a really big attraction at all of those UFO paranormal conferences and summits. Rob, you and I were talking about that before the show started. Mm-hmm. Sean is also a remote viewer. He has been the director of the Prophecy Research Institute since 1992. His book trilogy, Sands of Time, is an epic story spanning over 40 years in the life of the main character, Dr. Ted Humphrey, and his involvement with Area 51, the Dulce Missa Wars, the Montauk Project, Black Ops, the Shadow Government, and his meteoric rise to become head of an all-powerful global organization engaged in a desperate and above top-secret race against time to save our world. Morton is also an award-winning independent filmmaker and has been a reporter, writer, producer, director for Strange Universe, Hard Copy. You remember that?
I do.
Man, I remember Hard Copy. I remember Current Affairs.
A current affair. I could still hear that.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. The effect. It's one of those ones that are like burned into your mind.
I know.
It's like Pavlov's dogs or whatever. That one.
Yeah. He also was a writer or producer on Sightings, the Geraldo Rivera's Now It Can Be Told show. He has written, produced, and or appeared on Conspiracy Zone with Kevin Nealon, Best Kept Secrets, Destination Earth, Ancient Aliens, Magic and Miracles, The Other Side, Paranormal Borderline, Montel Williams, and was a fan favorite for 18 years on Coast to Coast. Get this, Rob. Art Bell once called Sean America's prophet, and frighteningly accurate.
Wow.
And actually, I was able to listen to one of his appearances on Art's show back in 1995. I have it set aside for a Quite Frankly TV rebroadcast night.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so there's that going on. And where we go is nobody's. Who knows? I have notes here, but we also have limited time. Mm-hmm. And in the second half, our last badass of this month of this year, I think you're really gonna like him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
No, it's not a Chinese female pirate this time.
I didn't dislike that one. I just didn't understand that there was like a picture. He was born in the 1700s.
Yeah, well,
It should have been, I would think, a drawing.
technically, we have a picture of Andrew Jackson.
He was not a Chinese female pirate, though.
He was in advanced age.
Yeah.
When was that taken?
Old Hickory himself.
When was Old Hickory taken? When was that picture? First photo of Andrew Jackson, year. Let's see what the year is. Okay, so the first and only Andrew Jackson photo. This is from 1845. So let me get him up here, Old Hickory. Oh, that's not good. Oh, here we go. This is 1845.
He just looks bewildered.
Yeah, no, he looks like he's about to ready to check out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
You
I
read
mean,
about his story and everything. Like,
I mean, you want to talk about badass?
I was just gonna say, you could have put him as a badass.
We'll
for
do
real.
it. I'll definitely do it next year. We talked about also the. I think it was one night I did a deep dive on the mathematical almost impossibility of him surviving that assassination attempt where the gun jammed twice, or two guns jammed, and then he was able to actually beat his assassin down with a cane.
Yeah. Hence the name.
Old Hickory.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah, definitely a badass dude, and definitely stood up for. I don't think he would enjoy too much the. Not that I think he should be removed from the $20 bill. I mean, nobody knows anything anyway. But sure, if you showed Old Hickory the $20 bill with all its various things on there, what is this?
I think
Reserve note.
Yes, exactly.
I don't think he would be too.
That's
pleased.
just the irony. I think it's just ironic that he's on the note there because of how instrumental he was in killing the one of the worst things that could happen to a country, and that is the central banking system that was introduced. Anyway, our guest for the evening is arriving. So without further ado, I want to bring on Dr. Sean David Morton. How are you, sir? I don't hear you yet, but don't worry. I know that you're on your way. Mr. Morton, are you there? I see him. He sees me. Hold on one second.
I was just praising your technical ability on putting on this.
Unfortunately, I do not control this. With Zoom, there's a little bit of a give and take. But don't worry, I'm sure he's done this before, so we're about ready to go. I can also put on the syncopated clock. You want to talk about technical ability? Sean David Morton, you there? Oh, wait, I don't hear you. I hear you very faintly.
1, 2, testing. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, but you're going to have to put your thing up real high.
How about now?
A little bit higher, please.
Higher than that?
Yeah, well, that sounds a little bit better. There you go.
All right.
Okay, so I'll just crank it over here. Welcome to the show, sir. It's great to have you on finally.
Finally, thank you very much. I've been trying to get on your show for a long time, so thank you for letting me in.
Well, it's been a little bit of a wait, but it's great to have you on. You are also here with my buddy Rob tonight, so the three of us are going to be hanging out for the next 40 minutes.
Hi, Rob. How are you? And can you hear me okay now?
Perfect.
Perfect.
You want your too loud or too soft, or what's up?
Oh, no, I mean, if you can actually get a little bit louder, it's fine, but at least you're registering now.
There you go. I just put it right here. Okay.
Wonderful.
Talk over it. That's microphone 101, right?
Yes, absolutely it is. So Dr. Morton, I want to talk to you about something. It's been great digging through your work, and I had the pleasure of listening to one of your appearances on Dreamland with Art Bell back in the 90s.
Yeah, some time ago. That's when I was his first national show, and I was one of the producers on that program that provided him with his guests, and we took that show from nothing to 27 million people.
At the height of it, we're talking about nearly 30 million people every day, which is incredible. And it sounded like he thoroughly enjoyed having you on, and you guys doing well together. And now you do your own radio show? Is that correct?
Yes, I'm on Strange Universe Radio, which is on Revolution. I just started doing it again, but it's revolution.radio. Hope everybody can tune in. It's from 10 o'clock to midnight, Monday through Friday. So hope everybody can come on over and check out my website, which is strangeuniverseradio.com. And of course, it's named after I was one of the founders of the United Paramount Network, UPN, with one of their first original shows, which was called Strange Universe Tonight, which I was one of the creators of.
Strange Universe brand, so everybody knows now. And I'll make sure I get those links out there too later on. And I don't want to spend too much time on this because we have lots to do. But when I was reading through and preparing for tonight, I did see that you were just released from prison last year. You had some problems with the SEC, it said. I figured I'd just ask you directly since Wikipedia never is friendly to any of the people I'm interested in speaking with anyway. So what happened there?
Well, the Security and Exchange Commission was a complete farce. I mean, it was a total farce. The whole thing was just a bad publicity campaign. We had a group of investors. There's about 30 people, and I turned $300,000 of my own money and about $225,000 of other people's money, most of my friends. And using my remote viewing techniques on the foreign exchange market, I turned that into $6.7 million. And then I had a trader. I didn't do any of the trading because when you do remote viewing, you don't want to look at the money. You don't want to mess with the money because money messes with your root chakra as opposed to the crown chakra, which is where the psychic stuff comes from. And I told my trader all the things that were going to happen, and he did not believe me. I told him that the dollar was going to tank, that the Canadian dollar and the Australian dollar were going to be worth more than the U.S. dollar. And he basically said, "That's impossible. You're insane." And he did not make the trades that I told him to do, and he lost the money. Then the SEC came at me, and it was the funniest thing ever, because they're just demonic weirdos. And they subpoenaed, I went into a deposition with these people, and it was all civil, by the way. There was nothing criminal, there was nothing, it was all a civil case. And I went in, and my lawyer is looking at this stuff, and it's like, wait a minute, where did you get this? And they're like, where are you hiding $6.7 million? And they subpoenaed the wrong company, a company that was using the same name as us, in Florida, which owned apartment buildings. So their whole case then fell apart. Then they turned around and said, well, you claim to be psychic, and being psychic is impossible, therefore we're going to sue you civilly for fraud. And the judge thought the whole thing was kind of a complete joke. And so the final thing in the SEC case was, okay, I'm going to give the SEC their bones so they don't look stupid in the media, but this ruling is only good for the tip of southern Manhattan, which is the district of the Southern District of New York. And that was it. As far as I was concerned, the whole thing took place on the moon. With the other thing, I was part of a national movement, which was filing what we called 1099 OIDs, which was tax forms with the Internal Revenue Service that forced the banks to actually pay money and pay the taxes. Because when you put your money in the bank, they use that money for investment capital, and then all you get is a very small percentage of interest, except if you actually file for the proper documents called the 1099 original issue discount, and then with that you file actually what's called the 1099A, which is abandonment and acquisitions, and that claims your money at the end of the year. That says, wait a minute, I'm not just going to let you guys get away with this. And of course that makes the bank pay the taxes, and then the IRS would then pay you back. So as I said, I got a return, and 6 months later the Internal Revenue Service basically said, we don't want you talking about this, we don't want you teaching people all this stuff, so we're just gonna, we're gonna sue you. And they still owe me $4.2 million, and they just don't want to pay. So they thought it was easier to file criminal charges against me and bamboozle a jury, which they managed to do. By the way, they rigged the jury. They rigged the jury with members of the Hillary Clinton campaign, a woman named Katie Ingberson, who was the data manager for Obama and Hillary, the third biggest person in their campaign. Then they put people on the jury that weren't even citizens. Then they found a judge who had worked as a prosecutor for the Internal Revenue Service for 28 years. And it's weird when the prosecutor stands up and says, this case has no victims and there's no monetary loss to anyone. And then an IRS agent got on the stand, and the judge said, wait a minute, this isn't a tax evasion case. Sean Morton told you every dime he made over the course of time. Get off the stand. So this is the kind of thing it was. I was not given discovery. I was given blank discs when the judge just rolled over that. So it was a violation.
And how long were you sent away?
I was in prison for 4 years.
4 years?
Yeah, and actually it was weird because I got out under the First Step Act and under all the COVID stuff, and they gave me cancer when I was in there, and I actually I was diagnosed with stage 4 terminal throat cancer, and I got out and I was fighting it, doing whatever else I could do, and then the DOJ just decided, we don't like him being out. So 5 months later, they grabbed me again. Nope, I couldn't go in front of a judge. There was nothing, and they shoved me back into another federal prison. Shipped me to Butner, North Carolina, where Bernie Madoff had just died. Actually, as a matter of fact, that's where Tiger King is now, in Butner, and proceeded to kill me with the first dose of chemo. Paralyzed both my legs, paralyzed my arm,
So are you still fighting the cancer right now?
Yeah, it's all lumps and tumors all in my neck and my jaw. But that was all them, and they refused to transfer me to a medical facility. They just said, tough luck. And at the prison where I was at in Big Spring, Texas, we had 5 guys die of COVID. Then 7 more people right after I left froze to death when they had the big cold snap there, and all the turbines froze up.
Well, let me ask you this. I hate to cut you off, but I want to be able to keep this as concise as possible, because I think that the breadth of work that you did prior to this run-in with the SEC and all that other stuff is just as compelling. But why mention that there was Clinton involvement in the jury? Did the Clintons have it out for you for some reason? And
yeah.
Okay.
I've worked for Hard Copy. I worked for Unsolved Mysteries. I did stories on the JFK Jr. What I think is an assassination, and I mean, I was up on ABC Nightline, basically yelling and screaming that Hillary Clinton had JFK Jr. killed, and had done investigations into her. By the way, it wasn't just me. All you people out there in the freedom movement, all you young bucks, if you will, 2015, 2016, right when Trump started running, they rounded up everybody in the freedom movement. It wasn't just me. It was Rocky Hudson, who was head of the Colorado Republic in Colorado. It was Tim Turner, who was head of the Southern Confederacy. It was Winston Shrout, who was doing bond stuff up in Oregon. So these are all the people that they rounded up, and I think universally got I think they all got 72 months or whatever. And then the First Step Act was supposed to start letting a lot of these people go, and as you can tell, the BOP have just ignored it. They're just like, nah, we don't have the resources. We have resources to make sure these guys have sex surgeries, but we don't have the research to actually implement the First Step Act, which would release probably half of the federal gulag population right now. And by the way, Trump's no hero either, because he had 10,000 pardons sitting on his desk and 50,000 requests for commutations of sentence, and he walked away from all of them, including Julian Assange and Edward Snowden.
That rubbed a lot of people wrong. That rubbed a lot of people wrong over here too. Julian Assange, there's a lot of mixed opinions out there about Edward Snowden, but everybody was unanimous about Julian Assange. We were scratching our heads.
Mitch McConnell's fault. Mitch McConnell threatened Trump and said, "I'm going to get my 18 butt boys that I control in the Senate, and we're all going to vote for impeachment. You'll never be able to run for president if you don't walk away from those pardons." And he walked away.
Okay, well, there's a lot more I can ask, but like I said, I want to move along here, and
I was hoping it was going to be all about that. But
no, it's all right.
It's going to be overturned because I wasn't provided evidence. We have an appeal working now, and they just picked people that they felt couldn't defend themselves, which was me.
Well, let's talk a little bit about something that the things that you become really known for. You are a remote viewer. First thing I'd like to ask is where you learned this. Well, were you self-taught? Were you a program inductee? Willing, unwilling? What?
Okay, interesting story. I was in the first. I guess I was the first remote viewing experiment at Stanford University in '76. I was taking advanced placement classes in summer school at Stanford. And the guys from Stanford Research Institute, which was Hal Puthoff, Russell Targ, the whole gang there, they just came into a psych class and gave us the fundamentals of it. And our goal was to predict where a couple of students in the class, they were excused from the class, and we were going to predict where they were on campus, like the following Friday. And they walked around campus with a twister spinner to make it all completely random. And then we would predict, okay, you're by the fountain in the quad, looking south at the Hoover Tower, and we would predict where they were on a map. And this is I've been a dowser using pendulums and whatever else, and so I sort of came up with my added a little bit to the program. Now Russell Targ was one of the people that pioneered it. Some years later, his daughter, Dr. Elizabeth Targ, and I became involved and lived together for a while, and we developed what's called the Associative Remote Viewing Program, which allowed her to go to medical school and, allowed me to live free, basically, because we go to Vegas for a weekend and take $1,000 and turn it into about 30 grand. And you leave the casino and you got tired of winning.
See, okay. So this is something that's really interesting, because it's the second time you've brought up something like this, that you using your abilities to be able to turn a buck. There's some people out there who talk about sometimes their abilities could be blocked by ethical reasons. One thing or another. You don't think there's anything wrong with going out there and hitting up the blackjack table, do you?
Well, remote viewing can't really be used for blackjack. It can be used for, there's there's energy techniques for blackjack, but no, I mean you're basically you're transforming energy into another form of energy, which is what you take that energy, and money is obviously a form of energy. And and if it's worth doing, it's worth getting paid for. And there's a lot of blockages to it. People say, well, if you're a remote viewer, how come you can't just go predict the lotto every day and go be billionaires? And you try to explain to people that that's not the way it works, because you have two sides of the brain, and the psychic abilities come from literally come from like this part of the brain back here, which actually correlates on a map, correlates to Southern California, but it's the superior anterior section of the brain. And the left-hand side of the brain, which is the male side of the brain, thinks in terms of height, width, breadth, a linear version of time, and mathematics, 2 + 2 = 4, geometry, if you will. And so what happens is it has the psychic ability of a bag of hammers, this side of the brain. This side of the brain, which is the feminine side of the brain, thinks in terms of quantum time. In other words, the holographic essence of all time and space in the universe is there. And that side of the brain thinks in terms of symbols, pictures, archetypes, art, but it's it's the lady in the purple muumuu running through the field of poppies, because this part of the brain has no 2 + 2 = purple to this side of the brain. So the way you entrain yourself is that you give this side of the brain a bunch of toys to play with, like a Star Trek console, or you basically create like the bridge of the Enterprise, where you have a ship that's traveling in the blood of God, if you will, that can take you anywhere in time and space that you want, and this side of the brain that then supplies that information. Therefore, if you and I were going to the casino and I had 3 targets that actually would predict the first, second, and third part of a roulette board. So 1 is 1 to 13, 2 is 14 to 26, and then 27 to 33, and that pays 2 to 1, so which is exactly like a blackjack. So if I have a fluffy cat and the Great Pyramid and the Eiffel Tower, and I've taught you the techniques, and I give you a coordinate, which would be like 2782 aqua, something completely random, and I take you through the protocol, or I sort of interview you in a process where I tell you I'm going to show you a picture after the spin of a roulette wheel after exactly 9 p.m. as an example. So it could be any time after that. And let's say what you see is, I see a lot of lights. I see it's weird. I see a structure in the middle, and there's a woman with with hairy armpits. I smell garlic. There's a waiter that's been rude to me or whatever. I'm thinking, okay, well, and then you draw something that looks like a tower. I'm figuring that you've now hit, out of billions of infinite possible targets, the Eiffel Tower. So we go down to the roulette board. 9 o'clock comes along. We'll place a bet on the third part of the board. And at the same time, just for fun, you take like $10 and you bet every number as well, because that pays obviously like 35 to 1, and you win, and you walk out and you rinse, lather, repeat, and that's kind of how it works. And we did this under, actually there was once again Stanford, Dr. James Spottiswoode, who's the brother of Roger Spottiswoode, who directed a bunch of the James Bond movies. We took an entire team up to Lake Tahoe, and he actually got his PhD thesis basically remote viewing and predicting the outcome of random number generators, which is basically roulette wheels, horse races, football games. Actually is only like, which team's going to win, which color is just like a 1 or a 2. So that's how we broke it down, and called Associative remote viewing. And actually it was Dr. Russell Targ and she and I put this whole protocol together to figure out how to make money to put her through school and pay the rent.
That's pretty interesting. It sounds like obviously a little bit more of a spiritual 21. That movie with the MIT, all the MIT kids went and figured out all the blackjack. Well, this is something else here. When you're doing this, obviously you're talking about going and being able to bring out a little bit more, money for yourself and take yourself to another, I don't know, maybe improve the creature comforts in your life. But as far as seeking information about the world at large, bringing yourself to be able to remote view places, people, or maybe even other times. When did you start learning that? How to really hone into that?
Well, it's just part of the focus. I mean, I was earth sensitive, if you will. It's a kind of, gosh, I'd have to go into my background.
I'm sorry, Dr. Morton, can you get a little bit closer? You're registering so low over here.
Wow. Okay.
A little bit better. Yeah, go ahead. Just project a little bit. Thank you.
Okay, there we go. How's that?
A lot better. Thank you.
In my headphones, it's like it's just booming in my headphones here. All right, so there we go. So no, I've been on a spiritual quest like this. I guess you could say one of the side effects of cosmic consciousness, for whatever reason, is that you just know things. And I spent time in India. I was I actually was at Dharamsala with the Dalai Lama actually for about 3 months, and then I went to a monastery in Nepal called Tangbache and studied with the Black Hat Karma Kagyu monks there. And it's just a question of opening up to what you need to know and what you want to focus on. And I started predicting earthquakes and natural catastrophes and whatever. And that's what, after I was doing the UFO stuff with Art Bell was saying, well, you make predictions too? And I said, yeah. And then my predictions were so dead on that I started frightening Art. He said he's got more hits than the Russian mafia and Barry Bonds and because I'd get up on the show, and this is all through the 90s, and I would give very specific predictions that would happen, bing, bang, boom. It got to the point where Art was saying, well, I'm not sure I want you to make predictions on the radio anymore. And I said, why? You let Ed Dames get up there, and he makes all kinds of predictions. You let him go, and he predicts the end of the world every time he comes on the show. And Art said, well, we all know Ed's full of shit, but the problem is that when you make a prediction, it happens. And I'm not so sure that you and I, with the gestalt between the two of us, that we're not programming all these millions of people to actually make the event happen.
That's interesting take right there.
So it's kind of an interesting thing because you're actually getting people between 10 p.m. and about 3 a.m. in the morning, and you're feeding this stuff into their subconscious, where it comes down. But I was making political predictions, and I mean just the political prediction I made in the last year, a year in advance. I predicted Amy Coney Barrett, a year in advance would be on the Supreme Court, that the Supreme Court would overturn Roe v. Wade, that Trump would actually win the election but would not serve, which didn't make any sense to me. But obviously, it
makes sense now.
Yeah, right.
But I also predicted back in 2015 that he would be the next president, and just tossing all that in. I was actually calling a radio friend of mine and making predictions when I was actually in prison, and they were all coming true. So it's just my way of contributing to whatever's going on. I also had a newsletter where I wanted to put things in writing. This is not just something where I say, okay, I predicted this, I predicted that, I predicted the other thing with no proof. So I started my Delphi Associates newsletter, which I had for like 17 years. I had 50,000 subscribers at one time, and I wanted to put things in print. So you could say, Sean said it, it's right here, it's in print, here's the date of whatever it is. But and also, by the way, predicting the dire things that are going to happen between now and 2025, 2026, which I don't think we can get out of now.
That's what I want to talk about in just a second. Before I get on to my my related follow-up question, I want to see if Rob had anything that was going through your mind. You want to jump in on anything?
No, but I'm eager to see how this timeline that, as Sean just mentioned, seems to have solidified is going to play out.
Yeah, I definitely want to get to that. I want that to be like almost like the coup de grace here. But first, let me ask you, Sean, in predicting the future, I read about this in a lot of your bios that you predicted the 1989 San Francisco earthquake, Landers, 92, 94 Northridge, 95 Kobe, Japan. There are people on the internet right now who predict earthquakes pretty accurately with the technology that's available on a consumer grade level. But of course, we're talking about you in the 80s and the 90s. What techniques do you employ when you're making important predictions like this?
Well, I was working with maps, where I just learned how to work with maps, and looking at the maps and running my hands over the maps and then feeling where the hot spots are on the maps and then focusing on that particular place. I also, I put a team together as well of a group of people that I taught and trained. And we were on the news a bunch of times. I mean, probably the most interesting story was a friend of mine used to run Channel 9, Artemis Shamamian, and I'd made a prediction. It was just kind of hubris, where I said, well, there's going to be a big quake, and they were saying when. I said, I don't know, next Tuesday. And they were like, oh, okay. And they sent a news crew to my house, and this was already just messing with me. They sent the news crew to my house on the Tuesday to say, well, here's the guy that predicted a big earthquake today. And he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just another one of these psychic fakes. And as the news crew was actually coming up the steps to my apartment, they're standing in the hallway when the earthquake hit. It was like 9:20 a.m. And the earthquake hit, and the whole house is shaking, and very much like Doctor Strange, I opened up the door and said, would you guys like to come in? And so the story became, we're in the home of the psychic that predicted the earthquake today, and we're on the scene. So suddenly 1230 News says, well, Sean Morton and his crew have predicted this particular quake. So the good news I can say, and this has a lot to do with the shifting of the timelines as well, and why it's been good and bad as far as what the time quake has been doing. And this is what my book Sands of Time is all about, by the way. The real reason I went to prison was because of my book Sands of Time. I mean, there was so much. It was literally the personal journal of a man in black who actually ran all these programs at Area 51, which they also call S2, S3, S4, Montauk, these various places, because they've been manipulating quakes. The Northridge Quake, for example, was the first one I predicted that was entirely artificial. And it was, I pinpointed the quake and the date and the time of the quake, but they were using extra low wave frequency wave generators to be able to generate that quake where it was, to remove pressure not only on the San Andreas Fault, but also to remove pressure on a big earthquake that should have happened underneath Edwards Air Force Base. And they're not going to do that because Edwards Air Force Base and the Antelope Valley Mountains right next to it was a gigantic underground Northrop facility, which is called the Anthill, but they were not going to lose anything there. So they triggered the quake in Northridge, which, interestingly enough, for as big a quake as it was, there was only like 60 casualties, and they had it all cleaned up almost right away. But they've been triggering these quakes along the fault line, along with nationally as well. The big quake in Washington, D.C., that happened at the same time as the quake in Colorado was specifically geared to relieve pressure on the New Madrid Fault, so bigger quakes wouldn't happen. You're not going to be having these massive, these ginormous natural catastrophes, but the majority of what's going to happen is going to be social, and it's going to be what your own government and military are going to do to you between now and the election, because all hell's about to break loose. By the way, the last thing I predicted, Alex Jones and I were actually the only two people to get it right. And I said that February 22nd was going to be when the Russians were going to attack Ukraine, and happened right on cue. And Alex said, "Oh, I had military experts tell me about it," and in my case, I knew the Russians were going to act on that day, primarily because I did the astrology on it. And there's a whole transit of Pluto that's happening right now. That Pluto at 27 degrees Capricorn actually happened on February 22nd. So the next big ingress is going to be, and the real focus that I'm working on now is going to be August 8th. So we're going to see how that comes down. But now that the New World Order has basically taken over your government, and the only thing standing in their way was Vladimir Putin, it was inevitable that we were going to go to war with them. And if you don't think they're going to use nuclear weapons, you've got another thing coming.
Well, so then let's talk about this. Going back to what Rob had expressed interest in, the solidifying of a no way out. Everything has been fixed. It's time to just pay the piper kind of a timeline that we have going on over here. Let's mix that in with prophecy in general. I mean, we dabble, obviously living in apocalyptic times. We dabble in prophecy on this show, and to be more specific, since you brought it up, me and Rob here recently leapt into comparing recorded visions from Edgar Cayce, Baba Vanga, Our Lady of Fatima, especially when it comes to speculating about possible Russia and New World Order endgames. Could you give us the status report on this particular subject? That would be wonderful.
Okay, so I ran the Prophecy Research Institute, and published the Delphi Associates newsletter. So I've studied all this. I've studied Nostradamus. I've actually used Nostradamus prophecies to predict a lot of interesting stuff, and I mean, including he actually had a prophecy where he predicted the outcome of the OJ trial. I know that sounds trivial, but we actually said he's going to be found innocent, and we've got a prophecy here that says that. But if you look at Edgar Cayce, if you look at Nostradamus, if you look at Gordon Michael Scallion as an example, who was kind of the Mac Daddy of earthquake predictors back in the day. Today, you probably don't even know who he is, do you?
No.
And yet he had a newsletter, and he was probably 10 for 10 as far as predicting earthquakes. And this shows that there's been a massive shift in the timeline, and there have been people that have manipulated time. And this is what my Sands of Time books are all about. Once again, you go to StorangeUniverseRadio.com, and these are the reasons. I've just got a brand new book out called Time Runner. It's been optioned for a movie, actually, and but all the timelines have been skewed. It's even, I mean, I've been a student of the Great Pyramid of Giza since I went to school in Egypt back in like 74, 75, and even the time code of the pyramid seems to be wrong as well. So there's been a massive shift, which I think is a blessing, that has then shifted the timelines, because nothing Nostradamus has said has been right since about 2005. Same thing with Edgar Cayce. The last real thing he predicted was probably Mount St. Helens, I would think, because he predicted a volcano in the Pacific Northwest in the late 70s, and Mount St. Helens happened in May of 1980. But the timelines have shifted. I mean, it's very interesting how that happens, because it's because of people like you and I, Frank, that because so many of us truth seekers have been able to get to alternative forms of media, that when you understand that time, it's not just a river, but it's a wave. And so when you have a wave that's coming towards the shore, like you're sitting on the beach, the only way to stop that wave, now let's say you jump up and you run into the ocean and you throw yourself into the wave only parts for a brief period of time and then closes up, and the wave then hits the beach. So the only way to go at it is you have to create an equal and opposite wave heading towards it, which then nullifies it. Now, I mean, we've had devices. There was a huge tidal wave that was actually heading towards the East Coast, and I mean, there was a shot from space. I used to show it to my group that there was a huge pulse that actually came out of Brookhaven Labs that actually flattened out that wave. A lot of cosmic things that have been happening, like a polar shift that we've been talking about, were actually stopped by a 9-minute black hole that was created over Norway. This was a big shift in the timeline. Also, was December 9th of 2009. So, and it literally changed the magnetic field of the Earth, whereas true north and magnetic north were heading towards each other, which would have led to a polar shift, or at least an electromagnetic shift. And then suddenly at that time, on that particular day, the magnetic pole of the Earth actually just stopped and took a hard right, and is now heading towards Russia. It's actually now in the Sea of Siberia, which is another way that each one of these earthquakes also, if you look at Fukushima, if you look at Bio Chile, if you look at really big quakes, each one of these quakes has actually adjusted the nodal axis of the Earth to bring us more in line with galactic center, and at the same time has moved the Earth back into its proper orbit, because the big reason why the ETs wanted Eisenhower to stop atomic testing is because we were knocking the Earth out of its orbit. So so the natural catastrophes in each case, and they can be stopped with with proper prayer, with the organization. For example, when the '89 quake happened in San Francisco, that was the World Series quake. It was October 17th of '89. On October 1st, which was my birthday, I took a group of people up to Mount Shasta, and I said, "You guys are going to think I'm crazy by the end of this, but we can stop this big quake that's coming." So I've got a whole group of witnesses of people who went up to Mount Shasta with me and beat a drum and did a meditation. The quake happened 17 days later, as predicted, but we drove the epicenter out of San Francisco, I think, in my opinion, down to Hollister, where it didn't do as much damage as it should have. So each one of these things can be avoided, and people should never think about that the size of the battlefield is important relative to the battle itself. You can have two people fighting each other out to win the day. And I know that sounds really complicated, but enough people have come together. For example, Donald Trump being elected was a huge shift in that wave and that timeline. And then the New World Order just came right in again and said, well, we don't care what you think. And if you think voting changed anything, they would have made it illegal a long time ago. So
so in respect to 2025, then, because you're talking about situations where people are able to affect events through applying consciousness and human intent, but
like the show.
But before you were speaking very definitive that we are going to have to face something that cannot be avoided at this point. What is that?
Well, because here's how it's going to go down. I mean, for example, they've already sabotaged your energy systems. They've sabotaged your food supply. They've sabotaged, for example, right now. And let me give you one big prophecy. You talked about all the prophecy people. One person that you missed that turns out is probably going to be the only one standing when all the dust clears is Madame Blavatsky. You ever heard of Madame Blavatsky?
Yes.
Madame Blavatsky started the Theosophical Society, and she was a big spiritualist. And her interesting prophecy was that she said in the first quarter of the 21st century that you would see what she called the Death Star. And here's a prediction for you. Here's that this Death Star would appear, and it would appear in the wing of the Swan. Well, oddly enough, NASA has now said that there's a huge, what they call a boom star, that two supernovas have collided back in 1638. and the light of this boom star was heading towards us. Now, they predicted that we were going to see it in the wing of Cygnus, and it was going to be the brightest thing in the sky next to the moon, and it was supposed to happen on June 1st. It didn't happen. NASA probably said, well, that's not rocket science. And it hasn't happened yet, but it's going to happen. And she predicted that at that time, there will be a great culling all over the world of men and animals. And what you've already seen, if you've seen a culling of men through, I think we defeated them in a lot of the, they had a planned international pandemic, which I think we thwarted them on. But the biggest thing has been your food supply. They've just killed, 30 million turkeys and chickens.
Tens of millions of birds, yeah.
Supply. They've sabotaged 30 actually food processing plants. The Biden administration has come in and cut off, Keystone Pipeline, and they couldn't give oil away, for God's sakes. It was like zero. It was like -5, and yet suddenly it just all shifts because it's all Putin's war. So, but it's going to be, and the food shortages are coming. Once the food shortages happen, you're going to descend into social chaos. And, look at people on Black Friday trying to get a TV. Imagine what's going to happen. I mean, we're 3 meals away right now from a revolution in this country. And we're right on that precipice at the moment where they're manipulating the food supply. They've already manipulated the population by basically instituting what they call medical rape, which is, I'm going to stick this thing in you and inject you with a bunch of chemicals that you don't know what they are. And at the same time, now they come out and say, well, it's my body, my choice, which really confuses me with the whole abortion thing. And yet you're perfectly willing to have everybody submit to the vaccine. So, they're losing their minds. Right now, they're hitting the bell and they're flashing the lights at the same time. And you're watching the dog, which is the American people, basically salivate and, lose their minds because they're pulling all the triggers at once now, which is inducing kind of a national psychosis, as you can see, if, through the mainstream media, is what it is. Excuse me a second.
Well, on the Great Reset end of things, that's a very collective term for a lot of the factors that you threw on out there.
Schwab.
Yes, yeah. There's that all happening. They talk big time about environmental, economic transitions that are necessary, this and that. But one of the ways that they have been ushering us into a time of really dire financial straits, which would require a great financial reset, is, as we were setting it up before, this showdown with Russia. So on that front specifically, what can you tell us about Vladimir Putin versus NATO and the next couple of months, if not years?
Well, Biden and Harris and the whole New World Order gang that have now taken over all three branches of government, they want a fistfight with Putin. I mean, when you can see it coming when Nathaniel Rothschild says that Vladimir Putin is public enemy number one to the New World Order. When Vladimir Putin says, I would strangle the New World Order with my bare hands if I could. He warned, this is a very interesting thing, he warned Trump in a public thing. I don't understand why everybody hasn't seen this. But he says to Trump, he says, President Trump, when you leave office, you must tell everybody everything you know about 9/11. And he also said, that we're currently in contact with 27 alien races, 3 of which are actively trying to destroy us. This is the president of Russia talking about this stuff. And how it's going to go is that push is going to come to shove. We're going to go at it with Russia. Russia is going to basically, wipe out the opposition. The Ukrainians have already lost. And because the New World Order guys do not believe in negotiation and they don't care about people and they're not going to back down, I think they're going to take a nuclear alternative to that. If we got into a fist fight with Russia with nuclear weapons, it would last about 200 seconds. And it's just how I think it's going to play. There were actually 2 nuclear weapons that were used in Ukraine back in 2014. There's video of it. You can see them happening, but they're tactical nuclear weapons. They're not like giant Hiroshima weapons. They're going to wipe out whole big land masses. They're strategic. So, and the Russians, all of the sanctions that we're passing against the Russians are a joke. I mean, the Russians they're just fine with it. They've got enough oil to do what it is they need to do. But if that comes, we're at the precipice of the possible annihilation of 3 billion people. And if you actually look into, read Klaus Schwab's Great Reset. His goal is to basically wipe out the population of Africa using, vaccines and whatever else, which, again, when you realize that the the Bill Gates-backed vaccine killed something like 250 million people in the 80s in Africa. And then he wants to mix the races. He wants to take China and Japan and take them because he thinks that they have more of a hive mind and they've been beaten into submission over the course of hundreds of years, and mix it with Caucasians, with Germans basically, and that he thinks that was going to be the perfect slave race. And then the climate's not going to get hotter; it's going to get colder, and then you want to move that slave race down to the equatorial regions. And this isn't me. I'll give you the quote where Klaus Schwab says it himself about what their ultimate goal is. And between now, here's the big picture. If you want the big picture, between now and 2034, there's going to be this mass drop in population. We're talking about 8 billion people. I don't even know how low it's going to go. But leading up to 2034, and in 2034, because now we're talking about a war with China, I'm pretty sure that the Chinese are going to go after Taiwan while the Biden administration is still in charge. And then it's Australia, and then it's them figuring with Korea and Japan, and that's the big war. That's the war spoken of in the Bible against the kings of the East with their 200 million man army, which comes after. So it's kind of interesting because you have the battle of man versus man, and then you have the battle of man versus God, really. And in 2034, this is predicted in the Great Pyramid of Giza, by the way, that there's going to be direct extraterrestrial intervention. It's going to get so bad. It's called the Day of Appearance, actually, and there's going to be direct extraterrestrial intervention after that time. If you want to go back to the pyramids actually predict the birth of the central messianic figure, which is Jesus. Predicts his birth at 2 BC and his death at April 1st of 33 AD. But they predict another Messiah coming, and this other Messiah is going to come out of England, if you understand the trajectory. And he or she takes control. I'm not sure if she's born then, but takes control on October 31st of 2039. And then after that, you have peace on earth. You have a release of technology. You have by 20.
This was all in the pyramid. I never heard of this being displayed in the pyramids.
It's all in the. I did a documentary actually. They're called Prophecy of the Pyramids, and a lot of it's in the work of Peter Lemassoure. The Great Pyramid Decoded, but it's all in the angles, because when you enter the pyramid, it breaks it down to pyramid inches representing years, and you have 3 paths of humanity, one going down to the pit where they're destroyed, another one going to the Queen's Chamber, which is the material world where you don't advance spiritually, and then you go all the way up to the all the way up to the sarcophagus in the King's Chamber, which is the 30th century, which happens when death is conquered, where you can lay down one body and go to another thing. But it's all in the angles, and it's all in the mathematics of the pyramid itself. By the way, you can look at Isaiah, because Isaiah says that in the last days there shall be a pillar and a monument to the Lord thy God, and he's specifically talking, it's in the center and the border of the land of Egypt, and there's only one object that's at the center and the border of Egypt, and that's the Great Pyramid of Giza. So it's all about Isaiah saying that man-made prophecies can be changed, but the pyramid's going to be there, going to stay.
That's very. I've never heard it before. I have to read what you had published. Very interesting stuff there.
I'll send you some stuff, and I've done remote viewing stuff where I've gone to the future and then sort of looked back, and something called the Vodger Chronicles. But a lot of it was told to me by the guy that gave me the manuscripts for Sands of Time, even though it was handed to me in 2009. But there's so much in those books. I mean, here you have Bob Lazar, who only worked there 16 days. And gives you little pieces of whatever he was about, and I give you the whole, the whole thing. I mean, the whole Megillah, the entire pizza with pineapple on the top, and it's everything that they were working on, and it tells you the true story, really the true story of the advancement of technology and the human race. About and the reason we were studying the captured saucers there is didn't really have to do with their element 115 power source. It had to do with the fact that the saucers could dilate time. So if you and I got in the ship, we'd spend 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes in there, and 24 hours would pass outside the ship. So that's what we were looking at, a way to dilate time, and a way to teleport and run through time, which is what the Time Runner books are all about. But the next 3 books of Time Runner, Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3, they basically lay out everything that's going to happen. So once again, strangeuniverseradio.com, please get the books.
strangeuniverseradio.com. Rob, anything that has popped up for you over the course of this? There's a lot thrown out there. I definitely have some. I have some thoughts on time technology I'd like to get into, but we're running out of time too, so I want to make sure you get
I know
anything
you
in.
got a great setup there, and I knew we'd only have a limited amount of time, so I'm sorry.
Hey, listen, we'd love to have you back.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here with you, sir.
Just to keep it topical, you mentioned Mount Shasta when you
Yes.
went there. So, is it like a point of power, if you will? Like I don't know how to describe it, but it's significant. That location itself is significant, right?
It all has to do with because California used to be a continent called Lemuria,
Right. Okay.
and so 17,000 years ago, you had the Gulf of Baja open up, and that's when the Channel Islands all came out. So you've got three real major power points. Actually, all across the Earth has chakra points, and the base root chakra is Lhasa Tibet, which is where the God Force, the male God Force, comes in. The second chakra is Cairo, is actually the Great Pyramid, where it represents the prostate ovarian chakra. The solar plexus is Stonehenge. The heart chakra is Machu Picchu. The throat chakra is actually downtown Los Angeles. Actually, that whole area is owned by the Catholic Church, by the way. But there's an area called the Gazebo at the top of Olvera Street that has an 8-sided octagon. And that's the exact center point of the throat chakra. That's why LA is movies and communications and music. And
Oh, wow.
That makes sense. Yeah.
and the third eye is actually it's a place called Tenri City, which is right outside of Osaka, Japan.
What about
And it is
Antarctica?
interesting because
What the hell's
Sorry?
going on? What's going on in Antarctica?
Antarctica's Antarctica's a whole ancient civilization there, and as the ice melts, there's ice-free regions. Actually, there in Antarctica, you have all of these bad guy New World Order guys all meeting down in Antarctica because they have big bases underneath the ice. They've also got one of the largest underground bases in the world. Is in Australia. It's actually in Pine Gap, right near an area called Alice Springs, which is the Area 51 of Australia. But the only one that's bigger, I think, is Yamanato in Russia, where you've got like 5 million people that can go underground to survive possibly a nuclear war. But what's going on down there is that the ice is melting, and if it is melting, they're kind of panicking about the fact that there's a whole civilization there, and maybe that's where Atlantis was. But to go back to Mount Shasta, your power points here in Los Angeles there's an area on Santa Cruz Island, which is in the Catalina Islands, where you can manipulate all the energy of Southern California. Then you've got Mount Tamalpais, which actually overlooks San Francisco, and then of course then Mount Shasta. And Mount Shasta, the belief is that under Mount Shasta is a Lemurian city, still other dimensional, called Telos.
Right.
And
Right.
somehow, some way, you can manipulate the energy of California from Mount Shasta. As a matter of fact, the first UFO sightings in that chain were right at the foot of Mount Adams, which is just a little ways away there.
Yes.
And
I know
a guy named
that was-
James Gilliland who has a ranch right at the foot of it, and they see
Right, right.
UFOs flying
Yeah,
around all
that-
the time.
Yeah, the ECTI. But Mount Shasta is supposedly smoking right now, and I've seen the.
What?
Yeah, they
Okay.
said that it's smoking, and what the report I saw was somebody was saying that no, it's just there's rocks falling and soot's being thrown in the air, and it's just I've read so much about Mount Shasta, and I was like,
There is something next to Mount Shasta called Shastina that has an open mouth to it, but they've been dormant for a long time. So
yeah, they said
if
that
they are activating, then that's the entire Cascadia Range right there, which would be very bad for a lot of people.
That's why I was like, well, what's going on over here?
Yeah.
I just know the significance, and I've heard about the underground over there, that the different city that exists in a different vibration than where
Right,
we're currently
well, that's Telos.
occupying.
If you really want to look at the horseman, the American apocalypse, it'd probably be Mount Rainier, because the weak side of Mount Rainier faces Seattle, and there's that entire city could be wiped out. Then you have Yellowstone, which of course is a massive caldera that's about 50,000 years overdue to erupt. Then you have the San Andreas Fault, which of course they've the entire tech agency. I mean, everything. Silicon Valley is right on top of the San Andreas. I mean, not to the left or right. And then you've got the New Madrid Fault, and in each case, predicting that there may be catastrophes on this, I've watched government science, and the super science that they've used basically diffuse or defang these various things, triggering quakes in DC and Colorado at the same time to remove pressure on the New Madrid. Yellowstone was building up and up and up. It went up about 30 feet or so, and then suddenly just all deflated like a big souffle. You just had one of the other threats, which was this huge volcano that started erupting on La Palma, which is in the Canary Islands just off of Africa. Had that volcano split in half, it had the potential of basically creating a 1,000-foot tidal wave that wiped out the East Coast.
Yeah,
well,
we
15
were
years ago.
worried about that over here.
We were following it pretty intently, and
my prediction on it was, because I was on Kerry Cassidy's Project Camelot, and I said, you don't have to worry about it. 15 years ago, I talked to guys in the military, said they went to Congress and said, we got to blow this island up, and Congress did nothing. And I know that they started working on it, and what they used was a combination of underground explosives and scalar wave weaponry to basically melt the entire volcano like an ice cream. And you'll notice that the whole thing just melted. So it's no longer a threat whatsoever.
Wow, where to go? I mean, we have to have you back. I'd love to have you back on a Thursday night so we can continue this, because there's so much here. But I know just also in the book series that you put out, you're talking about UFOs. I'd love to talk about your personal experiences that you collected from Area 51, the time control technology, whether it exists, who controls it, are we altering time, how that works. It's just stuff that we can't nutshell. And I really like to stretch out with that. But as far as what we've done tonight, I mean, there's more. I'm missing it right now, though, because we talked about.
If you want to talk about, I mean, it's almost to the point now. One of the things that I began to conclude, you've got Elizondo, and they've changed it to UAPs now because it's all fancy, and it's it sounds like much of a hillbilly talking about UFOs. I'm not even so sure any of it's extraterrestrial now. I mean, the $22 million dollars. I mean, let me tell you this: in the true black world, and this is what I was made aware of by Ted Humphreys, Dr. Ted Humphreys, not his real name, but the main character in the saga, going all the way from Montauk, where they were working on the first waves of teleportation. And this was back. I mean, we were teleporting things or stuff back in the early '60s, and we couldn't figure out how to teleport human beings. And then we figured out pretty much how to do that, how to bounce people around, and that's what the Time Runner was all about. Because you had to create a bubble around the person to protect them from the time stream, but that's a whole other story. But I'm not so sure anything's them anymore. The primary thing is that you have an agency called the Group, and the Group is what MJ-12 basically became, and they only report to, I guess, the moneyed, wealthy families that they call the Council. And that's the only people that they're really, and these people go back to the Medicis and the old banking families. It's 500-600 years or so with technology, but they're to protect us against all threats, foreign and domestic, extraterrestrial and ultra-terrestrial. Because the biggest threat also is not just ETs out there, but from in here. They're talking about the fracturing of dimensions and things invading. It's like if you go back to the Bible, to the book of Enoch. Enoch deals with the sons of God. And when the sons of God fall, Yahweh, or whatever you want to call them back then, basically puts a giant fence up around the earth, a huge barrier. And these things have been trying to crack that barrier ever since. And so when we started testing nuclear weapons in New Mexico, we were ripping holes in the space-time continuum. Not only were we ripping holes, but we were also knocking the planet off its axis. Which is
hold on.
With it,
hold on, Sean.
Magnetic polar shift, and then
Hold on, Sean. We were getting a lot of interference, and you're cutting out there. You're talking. You said that we were putting a lot of nuclear testing was going on. We were ripping holes in the space-time continuum, and then you started breaking up.
Well, you've got Roswell coming up here pretty soon. And of course, the true story of Roswell was that we set a trap for these ships were flying around like mosquitoes out there. They were just zipping all over the place. There's nothing we can do to stop them. So we set a trap for them. We actually put up something called the RX-47 microwave towers, and we put up these huge microwave grids so that anything that flew into it would disrupt the engines of these craft. So we caught 3 of them actually flying in formation, and the first one exploded and crashed into the second ship. So the first one that exploded is what created the debris field over Mac Brazel's ranch. The second one then fluttered down and created a big ditch and crashed outside of Corona. And the reason the military was all over it almost right away was because they're the ones that set the trap. They were trying to shoot these things down. Lieutenant Colonel Philip Corso, then in his memoirs before he died, said that there was a third ship, and this third ship panicked and kind of pulled the panic button, if you will, and that they went through time, and they actually crashed 10 years later in approximately the same location. And Corso claims that he met one of the ETs then and used some kind of device to communicate with it and let it go. But that was the whole story of Roswell, where we got a bunch of technology. I mean, we got integrated circuit boards and lasers and night vision.
I heard we got Velcro too.
I'm sorry, what?
I heard we got Velcro from the aliens as well.
Okay.
Well, I'm serious about it. Well, you know, that was what, July 7th or 8th? Because maybe we can, I'll take a look.
July 7th it happened. We're coming up on the 75th anniversary, I think, or some kind of anniversary.
Well, we got to talk about that and a few other things. So timelines, Russia, all that tonight. That's what we did here. And I guess going forward, as we're coming up ahead on 2024, a pretty big election there, pretty big election this November, and then 2025, where you said this is all coming to a head.
Everything is every cycle that I can think of. You got a biblical cycle. You've got nations only last 250 years. That's coming up. You have a Pluto cycle as well, which is interesting because each time Pluto goes to 27 degrees Capricorn, which is where it is in the chart of the United States, you're going to have a major eruption. You're going to have a war. You're going to have an atomic bomb. You're going to have. So, as I said, the next one is going to be August 8th. And as Pluto moves across this point in the chart of the United States, you can imagine and I think Putin chose the day. I mean, if there's anything the Russians are good at, it's psychic stuff and astrology. They know all about it. And so I think they picked the February 22nd date to invade Ukraine because of that conjunction of Pluto and Capricorn. So if Putin knows this and I know this, then I can predict, almost to the day what actions the Russians are going to take, and quite possibly the Americans as well, because it's going to come. The New World Order wants a fist fight with Vladimir Putin because he's the only person standing in their way, and they were going to use those. I think it was up to 46 biological weapons labs. I mean, they were going to use those. I mean, they would use those against the Russian people, and he stopped that. And then it was people don't understand also that Zelensky had said he was going to put nuclear weapons right at the edge of Russia. And he made this announcement 2 days before the Russians said, okay, enough is enough, when they invaded the whole Donbass region, because that's what they want. They want to re-annex the area that was Russian and speaks Russian, that the Nazis in the Zelensky regime were all oppressing and murdering and committing genocide against. So, of course, Putin's the bad guy and it's Putin war and all that other stuff. But, they used the same Russian stuff against Trump. They beat him over the head with all those lies for 4 years, which really handicapped his whole presidency. But it's going to be interesting to see how it comes down. I'm not saying that, I'm a big fan. I'm no big fan of any totalitarian regime. But if you look at every single place that Putin has been involved, he stopped the war. He stopped a war in Syria. He stopped the civil war. He stopped when the United States and Israel attacked Georgia. I mean, in every single case, he's made peace. And he's found a way to, smooth over a situation. So, I don't know what else to say about that. But
what I will say is you put out an August 8th date. We'll see. Maybe we can get you back on sometime around then, and really just do a little bit more of what we could have done tonight. Because I want to talk about Montauk. I want to talk about Area 51. I want to talk about all that stuff. And for now, Rob, if you don't have anything else, I would love to give you some time to let everybody know where they can find your work. And thank you for your time, Dr. Morton.
Thanks. Well, once again, Strange Universe Radio. Please just go there. We also have a full page ad for the books also running in the American Free Bulletin, so you can see all the information there. I'm trying to get back to doing readings for people because so many people want readings, and I just I physically can't do it because of the tumors are attacking my throat. I mean, I'm fighting it off. A year ago I was they told me it was terminal and that I had stage 4. And I managed to use alternative therapies and a lot of things. I had a 13-centimeter tumor. It was this big, hanging out the bottom of my neck. And I managed to basically burn it off using something called DMSO and black salve. And, I went for 16 months in prison where they weren't going to give me any medical treatment whatsoever or send me to a hospital because this was all part of the refuge. I mean, spent all the time in solitary, was beaten up by these people. For what? For filing papers that they didn't like. It was literally in a case where the judge said, or where the prosecutor said, well, there's no victims and there's no monetary loss to anybody. I'm like, then I would like my accusers on the stand under the 6th Amendment. said you can't do that because you're being prosecuted by a pile of paper, which is the corporation they call the United States. So it's they just want to make me look as bad as possible because, again, for what Art Bell and I did, building an audience of 27 million people to do what we're doing, everything all you people are doing today is because of what we did back in the 90s. And I produced Sightings, which was the biggest scene show on Fox at that time, and I was on the beginning of UPN, and I was on the start of Sci-Fi Channel. We actually started Sci-Fi Channel.
And can people read all this on strangeuniverse.com?
Well, that's just background stuff. I mean, that's kind of boring, but if they get the books, like I said, right now, you need to buy the books. You need to. It lays everything out, and the next 3 books, the Time Runner books, Act 1, 2, and 3 are going to be. I mean, they're revolutionary. They will tell you everything that's going to go on, and so it'll be interesting to see that. So anyway, Strange Universe Radio, and then you can tune in Monday through Friday at 10 o'clock on revolution.radio. I have Kevin Shaw on as my guest tonight, actually.
Oh, wonderful. So 10 p.m. Everybody can find you, and thank you so much for the time here, my friend. It's we would love to have you back and to go into other stuff. If you want to go into Montauk, Montauk's very interesting because of what was going on there and how they pioneered teleportation, actually, there about 63, 64, and how they did it and why they were doing it. Because we were teleporting satellites basically into the heart of Russian nuclear blasts. But once again, the reason we were doing that is because in explosions, you have a dilation of time. And so we were once again looking at the dilation of time within nuclear explosions, which is how we then learned how to do it ourselves. And then when the 9 ships were then moved into Area 51, sorry, that was back in '87. That's why they took everything. And of course, again, Bob Lazar came in. And we interviewed him back in, January of 1990. So I think it's funny that 30 years later, people are making a big fuss about him. But, and his story has completely changed. He put out a book called Dreamland, and it's completely different from the story that he told us personally and interviewing him. It's just very we'll definitely have a lot of time to do that because I would love to do Montauk and Philadelphia Experiment and maybe a little bit on Preston Nichols if you ever spoke to him in the past. I know Preston. Matter of fact, I was very good. I was best friends with Al Bielek, and I supported him the last months of his life. I mean, I was paying for his apartment down in Florida. I listened to a lot of his interviews.
Absolutely. Yeah,
wonderful interviews. I mean, those are the guys. Those are the 2 guys that made me believers in all that stuff. Preston Nichols and Al Bielek.
Yeah. Nothing that Al ever told me that I could check actually. Was untrue. I mean, everything that I could check with him, the scientists, the places, the whole thing. And but that was the beginning of, again, the invasion of Earth through other dimensions was through the Nazi Bell that they found. It was a star drive of a ship that they found in the Black Forest, and it was found by Grubenführer Hans Kammler, and they just ripped Swiss cheese out of the dimensional vortex. Then the Philadelphia experiment was key. Because that entire experiment where you had Tesla, you had Einstein, you had John Van Neumann, you had Vannevar Bush. I mean, you have guys who founded Raytheon and TRW and all these space agencies. But they're the Eldridge ripped 20-year holes in the time-space continuum. And again, based on Al Bielek, this is a big prediction that came true. I wrote a newsletter article back in February of 2003. And in February 2003, I told everybody that there was going to be a massive electromagnetic phenomenon that was going to probably result in an overload of the electrical grid. It was going to happen on August 14th of 2003 because every 20 years, the Earth hits a biorhythmic low point, and there's usually always a war or always something. And at that time in 43, when everybody's killing each other in World War II, you have to imagine that the time-space continuum sort of collapsed like an accordion, and then you shoot a bullet through that, which was the Eldridge, and then when the accordion when you relax it, now you've got these big holes in 20-year increments. So lo and behold, suddenly the entire East Coast blacks out on October 14th. It's like 4:25 p.m.
Yeah, I was at Jones Beach for that.
Yeah,
yeah, I was at Jones Beach in Long Island for that.
And the local Edison said an overload of the system happened in the blink of an eye. Is what they said.
Yeah, well, but it was really coming from a blink from a quarter century before, you're saying, or a couple of. It
was coming from 1943.
1943.
It was where the Eldridge actually reached the end of its tether, and just went.
So when it all blinked out on when you were out there on the beach, Rob, that the cause was 1943.
Oh.
So, well, you know what? I definitely have a lot. We have notes here to put together several new broadcasts coming up.
Yay!
Yeah, shout out to Sean Morton. Thank you so much for all this. I hope everybody goes checks out your show and your website and gets your books. And Rob, if you don't have anything else to say, I thank you so much for the time here, sir.
You got a great setup there. It looks like the Starship Enterprise. You look like Sulu, but not quite as gay.
I know, and he just keeps getting gayer, Sulu. So, but it's a very cozy room in here. And if you ever come to New York for some godforsaken reason, you can always come by and hang out.
I'm usually there twice a year speaking at the New Life Expo, Mark Becker's New Life Expo. So,
well, let us know. Let us know. You can come in on a Thursday night.
I would love that very much.
That would be cool.
It's been a real honor, Frank. I've been a big fan of yours for a long time, and want to thank Susie Smith for connecting us together. And
yes, thank you, Susie. And don't worry, it won't be the last time. And you have yourself a good broadcast tonight. Sean, David Morton, thank you for being on.
Okay, and let me send you some books too. Okay.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
I'll do that. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Rob, in the background there, mysterious Rob. Thank you. All right,
Thank
guys,
you.
God bless.
God bless you too.
Take care.
Sightings was a dope show.
Yeah, I knew it existed. I just never watched it.
Yeah. Oh, I was big on that. I'm actually wearing a Montauk hat right now, so I don't want anybody.
Oh, I didn't even notice.
Yeah. It's Montauk, the end. It says on there because I wear it because it's got an American flag, and it was when Krista and I were there last time. But growing up, I was always in Montauk because my father's a fisherman, and we would wake up. He would wake me up 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. Like, hey, we're going to Montauk. Let's go. We're going fishing, and we would just go and stay for the day. I'd be like, oh, I always went to Montauk. People were like, well, where'd you stay? Like, stay. We just drove there and drove home, and just fish. So, but interesting that there was always strange stuff. I remember one day a whale shark just washed onto the shore when we were there.
I gotta say, I did not know what we were going to get out of tonight's show, but there's so much information.
Yeah,
and he has so many decades in the game, and to be on first name basis with all those people that we grew up listening to and reading about. I don't know, man. I really enjoyed tonight, and
absolutely,
it definitely is not a complete experience. We got to talk to him more. For
sure. And in like what he was saying is that the timelines aren't exactly 100%. Certain things can be changed and moved. When he was talking about the wave and the meet it with the incoming wave, and it seems like what he's saying is he's like shows like yours and stuff that he was doing is the awareness and the consciousness is like the antidote to certain things. So that's good. So we should just keep it up. And I think there might be that stirs certain things, and maybe a little help from up above.
That'd be great.
And I don't mean aliens.
No, I know. No,
I don't mean anything like that.
No, I can't wait to get into the interdimensional Swiss cheese conversations, because Montauk was the continuation of Philadelphia.
Yeah,
and that's huge stuff. I wanted to learn about the Nazi Bell, and I'm glad
that Black Forest. And I'm sure you've heard certain various conspiracy things with the Black Forest. Even just what goes on there supposedly, which is not good.
I know
stuff that you know what I'm alluding to as far as games and these things. So I don't know. I think we're close to certain things. Like I said, it's funny. It was like like eBay, you could get like anything now, right? And so there was this one. My favorite shirt when I was a kid. It was the Montauk Lighthouse, and it was a great white shark, which would have, I guess by scale, would have been like a 400-foot great white shark jumping out of the water and biting the Montauk Lighthouse in half. It said Montauk is never dull. So I've been Krista was trying to find it for me for Christmas and everything, but it can't be found. Had to be produced in the mid 80s out in Montauk. It's a Ringer shirt, but Montauk is never dull. So that always resonated with me. It was my favorite shirt that I had.
Well, dude, I was listening to, I think it was maybe like 2 weeks ago, I was actually listening to an interview with Preston Nichols about Montauk. And when he was describing the technology and the kind of power that they were pumping through there to be able to do certain things. I mean, we're talking about teleportation and whatever, but the use of the Montauk chair, and not only that, about the being able to pull objects from a person's consciousness, where he said that it got a little bit tricky once objects became more complex. But as far as inanimate objects, blocks, spheres, things like that, they can actually be pulled from a person's consciousness. Memories and thoughts can be injected into somebody. But this was also where the story about the monster being released from in the laboratory and running amok came
like
from.
Stranger Things, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't believe it or not. I've just seen the one episode. That was it. I watched one episode the first year with when the monster comes, and I guess there was the whole thing was the build up to this. So that's the only thing I saw, and I was like, this doesn't look too good.
It is though.
Yeah, but you would think I would love something like that, and especially with, I'm just saying, my connection to and I know it takes place in Midwest, right?
Yeah.
But I know that it's based off of Montauk.
Based off of Montauk, I think you'd like it just for the callbacks to the 80s and all that stuff too. No, it's good.
Yeah.
Oh, the other thing, I know that you don't watch movies anymore since Star Wars, but
movies are over.
I know, but if you're ever home, or if you can project it onto a wall so you can see a bigger screen, get some good, or if you ever go to T's place to hang out there, maybe that's what we should do in a couple of months when it comes on DVD. You have got to see the new Top Gun. Dude.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I could see it. I just can't go to a theater and pay for it.
I know.
That's the rule.
But you've got to see it.
Okay.
I walked out, I said, we were all just talking amongst ourselves about, what we loved and all that shit. And I said, Rob's going to love this one. But he obviously has to see it someplace.
Yeah, rules are rules. Best Tom Cruise movie ever, or what? Is it?
I think so.
It's better than Legend?
Oh, I actually never seen Legend.
Oh, come on.
I've never seen it.
You haven't seen Legend?
No. But dude, this
awesome.
was I can tell you.
You haven't seen Legend?
I haven't seen Legend, but I've seen a lot of movies. And
I know,
can tell
that's
you.
what I'm saying. How could you have not seen Legend?
Well, I'll go check it out.
For real.
But I will say this, that I had so much fun. I haven't had that much fun in a movie theater in many years.
Everybody's saying the same thing.
With Top Gun.
Yeah, everybody's saying that it's like, because it's like that relief from all the woke nonsense that you're just inundated with.
But I love the honoring of the past without apologizing for it. There's nothing to complain about. Unless you're on the crazy cult side of things, then you complain about everything.
Yeah. Well.
I'm not going to go to an intermission because we have to do the super chats and then I have to do the badass of the night, which I said I think you're going to like, and it's going to inspire some conversation along the way. Let's go to Tipistream. Quite frankly, superchat.com. Hello Kitty SKS says, just wanted to say hi. Hope you and yours have a great July 4th. Same to you, Kitty. Thank you. Rick from Tulsa says, Frank, great job on Timcast. Regarding Utah County, look up Jenny Marie Hatch. She's on the beat of it and would be a great guest to have on the Discuss the Case, and then gave me her Substack. I will check that out.
That's a word, a warning caveat with that as well, because that's some stuff that you cannot, that's only for a certain mentality that can, it's the most diabolical stuff. Because there was, that was brought to our attention by the Zell brothers, that was going on in our neighborhood, literally our neighborhood, right? And so that was who I went to see, her stuff that she put out there, to read the reports. Now I couldn't get through everything because it was just, you can't. It's so horrific.
I went through a couple of pages in my stomach.
Yeah, so
too much.
The thing is that the stuff in art, I was literally, I had football practice there in that park where the house is at that time. Now, the names are redacted and the age is redacted, but you can tell and infer that these are kids that are they're the same age as me. So 87, 88, 89, those 3 years that was our football practice was there. And then 2 years after that you practice, but that was midget football. That's right. So, just to think that while I'm there, that house is there, and then you see this report.
There's a nightmare going on inside.
A horrific nightmare. I mean, so yeah, what's out there, what that woman is collected, and she put the stuff there, but that's not for everybody. And then even people that can read some of that, you have to walk away from that, because and like I said, the only reason I got to the point where I just was looking at stuff just specifically for how it's in our neighborhood, literally. I mean, it was right there.
See, that's that's the horrors of the rabbit hole sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes it's just, you look into the abyss and the abyss looks back, right? That type of thing.
MLG says, Tim and crew have very surface level conversations. Anytime anyone tries to go deeper, Tim quickly changes subject, either afraid to annoy YouTube gods or just cannot think on that level. It is what makes you and the Franklies special, says MLG. I appreciate that. Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Let's see. What else do we have? Rockfin. Todd Fife says, Ian is like Baba Booey. I enjoy him most of the time.
Again, maybe, I don't know. He just seemed like a genuine person to me.
He is, definitely.
Yeah, like, so, and that's where I was, I think that's good. I think people should be authentic. No matter who you are, you should be authentic and true to yourself.
Selling the Farm says, thanks you guys for the show. It is a place I always go to chill for my evening. That's a wonderful compliment. I want everybody to hang out and have a good time. Donkey Punch on Foxhole says, great job on Tim's show, and maybe you can get to know Ian better. We're talking a lot about Ian tonight for sure. I
told you, that's really the Ian show over there.
I told them all. And I was very, very genuine about everything. I was grateful to be there, grateful to get to know everybody. I think that it was a good time, and I was very genuinely inviting everybody there. Anytime you're in New York, come by. Would love to host you all. But yeah, Donkey Punch says, Frank, you're the best at what you do. Don't worry, it's gonna work out just fine. Oh, it's already worked out, and I appreciate the compliment, seriously. But it's already worked out. Listen, no matter what happens, if this is where it ends and this is where it stays, I'm beyond blessed. And I can go into all the reasons why, because it's not just about the ability to support myself and a family. It's so much more than that. I'm beyond blessed. So, and I'm fine with taking little baby steps and etching this out little by little. Totally fine with it, because it's been a wonderful ride. Paulie9363 says, Tai Chi, Rob, Taekwondo patterns real slow. What? No snap. Tai Chi, Rob, Taekwondo patterns real slow, no snap.
I guess that's what he's saying, is that the Tai Chi form itself is, I mean, look, the way it was explained to me, Tai Chi, Kung Fu, whatever. It's like Frank, Rob. It's just like your name. That's it. I mean, it's all the same. You could differentiate certain principles because you have your body, and of course, yeah, I mean, different things accent different things, but it's the person that's studying is what matters. What style is the best? Well, then just let's do the best one. Well, what are we gonna play games for? No, it's the person that matters. And so yeah, I'm sure if you're saying Taekwondo, I've seen this absolutely without snapping. And personally, when Tai Chi, I see a lot of Tai Chi where they express that, punching, whatever, a little. That's fine. But because I study various different things, when I do Tai Chi, I want that still in the stage where I just need to strip away energy because I'm still too
wound up.
Yeah, even still, you know what I mean? So maybe in another
everybody know
30 years of practice.
Remind everybody about your classes and what's going on Saturday and how they sign up. By the way, Kung Fu Channel, kungfuchannel.com is on the affiliates page. So go and contact Rob and become part of those wonderful classes. But let them know what the schedule is.
kungfuchannel.com. I'm doing just a Qigong class, basic Qigong class. Saturday mornings, 10 a.m. Eastern, Wednesdays, 6 p.m. Eastern. It's live via Zoom, but if you can't make those times, I record the class, and you can take it whenever you like. And yeah, it's good, healthy. So we learned some concepts, and when people are coming in, and I say, hey, look, get something that resonates here and just apply it. How it goes. It's just a method. It's like I said, it's the foundation, building block, basic level stuff, but you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
Something's a basic. It's never. I was telling you today when we were practicing, the Grandmaster of Fu Jiao Pai, which is the Kung Fu system that I study, is people always say, well, my guy, this he's the legend. Okay, like I said, I walk down the street in Chinatown in Manhattan and I have the insignia on, and people are like, great hero. I'm like, yeah, like he's the real deal. He, in his book, which is on my website, by the way, link to his book, Shaolin Temple, which is certainly a commercial, whatever, they made a thing for, like, they made an inscription specifically for him as like this great person that's propagated the art or whatever. He didn't even go into the temple. He took a picture next to the thing. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go over here when he was on tour. But yeah, he has mentioned about, like I was saying to you today, like this one Tai Chi sword form, which he took from the lady who did the 2008 opening ceremonies in Beijing, the coordinator of that. There he is. That's me and
there's the man.
Grandmaster. Hilarious man, by the way. Hysterical. Awesome dude. But he was talking about the Tai Chi sword form that that they had exchanged and shared ideas with, and he's like, yeah, I've been working on it. This is what he told me just last week. So I've been modifying it, perfecting it the past 17 years. This is a man who is, like I said, he's the man. 17 years I've been going with it. It's still missing something. Still not good. I mean, and this guy is like, even like back in the 70s, they were writing articles about his greatness and everything. And his book, A Tiger Looks Back, you could see the English version, is hilarious. Put it this way, I think it would it'll trigger people no matter what side of the equation you're on. You have to be able to handle certain things. I mean, because intrigue, straight up, like there's political ramifications to this stuff. And as I've mentioned before, my teacher, that's my teacher's teacher. My teacher passed away. Sifu, you got to meet him. Great person. Him and I have had many conversations about when he was in China and his feelings towards the Communist Party. Which he was definitely not pro-communist at all, as he had to live through the Cultural Revolution. And his family was a hardworking family that was trying to make better, and had stuff just totally taken from them. So very much in line. But then with them over here in New York City's Chinatown, there was all types of stuff. The book's incredible. Chinese Freemasons and all that. I
definitely want to read it there too. KungFuChannel.com. Do that.
Yeah.
But speaking of that, it's just speaking of Qigong and 17 years and still missing something. That's another reason why when people and all with best intentions say, don't worry, Frank, you'll make it. So, no, I'm just here.
That's what
there's no finish line to this. There's no, if you haven't 17 years and you're still tinkering with something, there's not a finish line. You're just in it.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was saying in the beginning, in the opening. It's a craft. This is a craft. And when you're doing that, and it's an art, and then when that's it, then it's limitless, because there's always this refinement. So that's why I say, I only do the basics.
Yeah, the basics.
That was just the basic.
You'll be well.
I started practicing and
well occupied
a long time ago, and it's still learning the all advanced stuff is just basics layered on top of each other, right?
Basics, basics will keep you well occupied. That's for sure.
It's just another building block. That's all.
Let me see here. Central 1234, thank you for the cookie. Trick Pony, thank you. Tom Ford says, great guest tonight. Please have him back on. Oh, he'll come back for sure. I'll make sure that I'll see what we have going on for some more Thursdays, maybe a little bit later in middle of July or something. I'd love to have him back in at least a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we got to get that energy for August 8th if we're looking at a node.
When the hell is... Okay, August 8th of this year is a Monday. We can have him on Thursday, August 4th. or do we want to have him on Thursday, August 11th afterwards, talk about the 8th?
Well, no. I mean, if it's gonna be cataclysm, we gotta do our role. We're here to change the world.
All right, so we'll get him on for mid-July.
End of July, yeah.
And then maybe right before.
Well, I think maybe the end of July will take us through.
Right. Okay.
We did our part.
Let's see here. Thank you, Tangerine26. This was awesome. Rise of Tire says, "Wow, hope all the Timcast peeps came to check your show out. Get their little beanies blown off." Well, I hope, as I said there that night, and if I ever go back, I'll say it again. This could be a perfect pre-show to your to the 8 o'clock excursion with Tim.
Yeah, and I guess you got to give him the credit. That is gracious. I mean, are you rival, right? Like it's a rival. It's essentially
the internet. Everybody's on at the same time.
Yeah,
that's what It's just one of those things. And the good thing about it is that whereas if we're talking about if we're talking about competing radio time slots or something like that back 30 years ago, that's where you're a little bit left out in the cold because somebody
you can always watch now at any time.
Yeah. I mean, you can just stack your days up. First of all, my mailman saw me today and he was happy. He gave me
because you shouted him out on the thing.
He gave me a bottle of something.
That's the difference. You know what I mean? The human element. That's I think that I think that this show is good. To sum it up succinctly, I think your show is good, and it brings people together, and it's important on many levels. For the mailman, and he hooked you up with a bottle of.
I don't know yet. Okay. He gave me a card. He said, quite frankly, and he had put a bottle of something there. It's probably some wine. He said, Frank, I can't tell you how that was just like about. It was amazing, man. He said, I've clipped that out. I've said that to friends of mine.
Awesome.
That's great. So I said, well, hey, there you go. Mike the mailman got a shout out to God knows how many people. But yeah, let's keep it up because it feels too good to do shit like this. Rise of Tire says, wow, okay, we did that. Thank you again, Rise. Anita BJ says, how did Rob know to wear that hat? Synchronicity. That's how it plays out. Risen Patriot says, shout out to all the Franklies from the Def Leppard concert in Nashville. Rock on, everyone. Nice. Enjoy yourself out there.
The Def Leppard and Poison and Joan Jett and Motley Crue as well.
Yeah, it's a big
show.
They're going all over the place.
Yeah, I'm sure. I've been hearing reports that it's from Hair Nation. People are saying that it's pretty good. That the bands sound good.
Right.
I told you when I was in the car and I heard like a Def Leppard. They were playing a small show and they kept putting it on the satellite radio, but they sounded good. Like I was like, all right, because as I am my first favorite band was Guns N' Roses, and so I mean I got to see them. I got to see a great level live, but now it's just it's tough. The thing is though, it wasn't that long ago he stepped in and did AC/DC.
Right.
It was awesome. That was awesome.
You just don't know what people's personal habits are though.
I mean, I don't know. I mean
You just don't know.
But or maybe there's injury or something. I don't know.
Injury, age. I mean,
I mean, it's tough.
You have to. It takes. And here's the other thing there too. I was talking about this with Anthony during a time, not too long ago, where we were getting ready and he was having a little trouble, just getting his voice in shape in a quick manner. And I reminded him. I said, Ant, you are 35 years old now. You have to understand that for all things.
Yeah.
For all things, you have to work exceptionally harder to maintain and especially make gains at this point.
Yeah.
And you also have to give yourself a little bit of a pat on the back as a vocalist because it's rough. I can break some sticks. I have to replace some cymbals. Whatever the hell it is. When your instrument is your voice and you're talking about this small little collection of tissue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, it's
because I wonder. I wonder if the doing the AC/DC because he did it well. And that's not. I mean, I'm not a singer, but I'm sure that rasp to do Brian Johnson and even the Bon Scott songs. I mean, that's no joke.
Yeah, there's
right?
ways. There's ways to preserve your voice in doing the rasp. But like again, we're talking about people in their 50s, 60s.
He's 60 years old.
Yeah,
it's no joke. But I know. I mean, a lot of the stuff, because I just saw something like it's just from just recent. They were over in Prague or whatever, and it's just like, it's tough.
You ever hear Phil Anselmo these days? Phil Anselmo when he talks.
I haven't heard him sing.
When he talks, he sounds like a foghorn.
Really?
That's how low.
Yeah.
But he's been pulling himself together. I saw a live performance he did with Down at there's tens of thousands of people. I think they might have been in Europe, but I saw a live performance recently that he did with Down, and I thought he sounded great.
Yeah.
I mean, for what he's doing, it sounds great.
For where he's been in his life.
He's been.
Talk about somebody who's authentic. His interviews are incredible.
I would love to have him on this show.
His interviews are just like, that's somebody that's he's lived a life for sure. But a lot of respect for his honesty.
Okay, last one here is Siege. Says, guest mentioned freedom fighters being arrested at the end of 2016. Would love to know who they are and why. Well, he mentioned a couple, but I'll make sure I write this down. Yeah. I'll make sure I'll write some of that down for next time. We have so much to cover with him next time. Let me just make sure one more time that I got everybody. Yes, I did. All right, so who is the badass tonight? We're going to roll over 9 o'clock, that's for sure. But who the hell is it? Let's do it. It's the last one of June 2022. Again, we will see you next June with another badass month. But who is it tonight?
That's some badass shit.
It's pretty badass.
Yes, indeed it is. Now, Vilhjalmur Stefansson. That's his name. In 1928, Rob, you're going to love this. In 1928, Vilhjalmur Stefansson ate nothing but meat and water for an entire year. And what happened was astounding. Listen to this. Stefansson was a famous Arctic explorer whose expeditions are beyond legendary. He lived with the Inuit and learned to eat and thrive off their native Arctic foods. In 1928, Stefansson determined that he was ready for his next challenge. No, this challenge would not be another overseas voyage, but rather a challenge that he would complete right in New York City. He decided he would eat nothing but meat and water for an entire year. Stefansson wanted to prove effectiveness of the Inuit diet that he watched the indigenous population consume for years. He watched them consume a primary meat and fish diet that consisted of seals, whale, caribou, waterfowl, with very limited vegetable consumption. By conventional measures, the Inuit had no business being healthy. They spent months in the darkness of winter, unable to hunt or do real work. However, Stefansson observed that they were the healthiest people he had ever seen. He saw virtually no obesity or disease. Stefansson believed that the high saturated fat content of the Inuit diet, 70 to 80% of total Inuit calories came from fat, was the mechanism allowing these people to thrive. Stefansson observed that fat was the most precious dietary input to every Inuit he observed. Upon hunting a caribou, the Inuit would savor the fat deposits behind the eye and jaw, in addition to the organs and shoulder. The leaner parts were fed to the dogs. Damn. This contrasted the nutritional narrative that individuals like John Harvey Kellogg were pushing at the time. I talked about this with Jay Gulanello, how, Kellogg's corn flakes were supposed to get you to stop masturbating.
Yeah. Watch the movie The Road to Wellville.
Okay, so here you go. He says that religious fanatics like Kellogg believed that raw vegetables and grains were virtuous and meat and saturated fats were sinful. Western doctors also believed the Inuit diet to be vitamin deficient and dangerous. Stefansson saw a different perspective. As the Inuit population he observed was utterly thriving, he also realized that the oils, livers, and fish offered essential nutrients. In addition, Stefansson himself ate a native Inuit diet for years, starting in 1906, when his food supplies failed to show up during his voyage that year. He couldn't believe how good he felt on their Arctic diet that consisted of fish, meat, and saturated fat. To properly monitor his carnivore experiment, Stephenson checked himself into New York's Bellevue Hospital with a fellow explorer. They spent multiple weeks receiving blood tests and had various blood biomarkers checked. After the control period ended, their staple foods they consumed were very simple. They ate steak, roast beef, brains, tongue, calf liver once per week to prevent scurvy, and were committed to doing this for an entire calendar year. Newspapers, periodicals, and various doctors condemned Stephenson's experiment as dangerous. They insisted that the men would get scurvy or even potentially die. Stephenson defied all critics and insisted that all meat diet filled him with ambition and energy. Upon examining the two men during their year-long experiment, the doctors reported that neither man showed elevated blood pressure or kidney troubles that were expected of a carnivore diet. Stephenson became ill only once during the year, and this is when the experimenters had him cut out fat from his meat and eat leaner cuts. This illness was quickly corrected by a meal of sirloin steak and brains cooked in bacon fat. His symptoms immediately improved. Dude, shit. Here's the last piece. The men also ensured that they did not contract scurvy because they were intentional about eating the entire animal, including the bones, organs, and brain. At the end of the year, both men reported that they felt fantastic and were in amazing health. So the experimenters reported on their health. Here it is. Both men were in good physical condition at the end of the observation. There were no subjective or objective evidences of any loss of physical or mental vigor. The teeth showed no deterioration and gingivitis had disappeared. There was, however, an increase in deposits of tartar on teeth. VS bowel elimination was undisturbed. Required no extra catharsis, and KA was regular throughout, so they weren't even backed up. So what do you think about that, Rob?
Absolutely. I mean, you know that I like the self-healers protocol. Everyone could check that out. Maybe not for everybody, because it definitely flies in the face of conventional wisdom. But that diet is similar to that, and you know, the guy who came up with that is saying that no, the vegetables are actually toxic to us, and pretty much everything is toxic to us. But you know, that whole thing is that diet and you know, distilled seawater or just sea salt in water will help with the cleanse and actual hydration of the body, which people think is not the case. And you know, they talk about blood pressure and everything, but that's just because your body gets detoxing with that. So yeah, absolutely. Fat, that type of fat is good. The fat that is this bullshit fake food, Frankenfood, is similar to what Sean was talking about, how we're poisoned, and that is not, no, that's killing us.
I just got a text message from Jay Gulanella right now.
Oh yeah?
He's going to be on tomorrow night. We're going to be talking about barbecue nutrition, like because it's barbecue season. If you got nothing going on, come by. It's going to be a short show because I have to do the last book club session tomorrow night, but it still should be great. Jay says, great badass, Frank. I studied Stephenson in school. Blew up dietary dogma. Yeah. Hey, listen, how many times have they told us, so cut all the fat off the meat? Yeah. You know? I go for that first, man. That just, I know. It's fantastic.
I know. I do now, too.
You better leave that damn thing on. Okay, so well, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for all the company tonight. Tomorrow is another night, 7 o'clock. We will be here. I hope that you are here as well. And Rob, thank you for chilling out, man.
Thank you.
All right. Well, with that being said, I will catch you guys on the flippity flop. See you later.
I'll catch you on the flip side.
Quite Frankly is filmed before a live studio audience, and now our super chatters, starting with Hello Kitty SKS, Rick from Tulsa, MLG, American Beaner, and I want to thank everybody on Foxhole. I just released the scratching. Thank you to everyone else. We will see you tomorrow. Don't be late.
Okay, Chief, take him away. I'm gonna go home and sleep with my wife.